The small town of Midford had always been a quiet place, the kind where neighbors knew each other by name and where every sunrise felt like a familiar friend. Yet even in a town filled with warm faces and gentle habits, wounds could still form, deep ones, the kind that silence people for years. For Clara Dawson, silence had become a companion she hadn't chosen but had learned to live with. Her life had once been filled with laughter, music, and the kind of sunshine that seemed to live inside her. That was before the accident, before the single phone call that shattered her world. 3 years earlier, her younger brother, Jamie, had lost his life in a car crash caused by a drunk driver. He had been only 19, full of dreams and stubborn energy, always humming some tune he was working on, always trying to make her smile. And then, in one night, he was gone. The driver, Lucas Hale, had been only 23 at the time, a quiet young man who worked at the town's hardware store. Clara had known him vaguely, enough to recognize his shy nod whenever they crossed paths. After that night, Lucas had become the most hated name in Midford, especially in the Dawson household. Clara had stopped speaking publicly a month after the accident. Not literally, but emotionally. She no longer laughed, no longer sang, no longer reached for the guitar that Jamie used to play with her. She moved through life gently, carefully, as if afraid that anything louder than a whisper would wake the pain again. Her parents grieved too, but they grieved differently. Her mother tried to drown her grief in routines, baking, cleaning, gardening. Her father grew quieter, withdrawing into long walks and late nights staring at the empty seat at the dinner table. They never talked about forgiveness. They barely talked about Lucas. When they did, the words came out heavy and sharp. Lucas, on the other hand, carried a guilt so crushing it had reshaped everything about him. After the accident, he pled guilty without argument. He served his sentence quietly, never once trying to defend himself. He knew he had destroyed a family, and there was no punishment severe enough to undo that. When he was released, people in Midford avoided him like a ghost. Mothers pulled their children closer, neighbors refused eye contact, and even the store he once worked at declined to take him back. Lucas didn't resist any of it. He simply went back to his small, worn-down house at the edge of town and stayed there, rarely stepping outside except for groceries at dawn, when he hoped no one would see him. Midford was small, though, and eyes were everywhere. Clara had not seen Lucas since the day of Jamie's funeral, where he stood far at the back, trembling, before disappearing again into silence. She had told herself she never wanted to see him again. She believed there was nothing left to say. But life has a way of creating moments we don't think we're ready for. It started on a rainy Tuesday morning in early spring. Clara had taken a rare walk outside, needing fresh air after another sleepless night. She wore her coat loosely and kept her hands in her pockets, trying not to think, trying just to breathe. As she passed the small community center, she heard faint noises, metal clinking, wood scraping. Curious, and maybe just wanting a distraction, she peeked inside. There, kneeling by a broken table, was Lucas. For a moment her breath froze. Time seemed to shrink around her. She recognized him instantly, the stooped shoulders, the messy brown hair, the way his hands moved slowly as if he was afraid to break even the wood he was repairing. He didn't notice her at first. But then, as if some silent tug pulled his gaze, he turned, and their eyes met. Lucas's face drained of color. He stood so abruptly the tools clattered onto the floor. His lips parted as if trying to form words, but all that came out was a small, strangled murmur. Clara felt something tighten in her chest, anger, grief, shock, she didn't know. She turned immediately and rushed toward the door. "Clara," Lucas whispered, not loudly, not confidently, but with such desperate guilt that she stopped for a second without meaning to. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. I'm sorry," he managed. "For everything. I know I don't have the right to say anything, but I'm so sorry." The words were weak and trembling, but they were raw. They were real. Clara walked out anyway. She spent the rest of the day unsettled. Hearing his voice, seeing his face, it reopened something she had sealed shut. She told herself she didn't want to think about him. She told herself he didn't deserve forgiveness. She told herself that letting go would be like letting Jamie go, and she couldn't, she wouldn't. But in the back of her mind, she kept hearing his voice. Not the apology, she had heard apologies before, but the way he had said her name, as if he wasn't sure he deserved to speak it. The next morning, Clara found herself walking back to the community center without knowing why. Inside, Lucas was again repairing furniture, old chairs, worn benches, broken shelves. He seemed surprised to see her, but he didn't speak. He worked quietly, shoulders hunched. Clara watched him for a long moment. "Why are you fixing these?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a breath. Lucas looked startled that she had spoken to him. "The center's budget is tight," he said softly. "They can't afford replacements. I wanted to do something helpful." He avoided her eyes as he worked. "You're not getting paid for this," she said. "No," he answered simply. Clara stood there silently. Watching him, she saw something she hadn't expected. He wasn't trying to look good. He wasn't trying to win sympathy. He seemed almost like he wanted to disappear, but before he disappeared, he wanted to make something better for someone else. She left without another word. Days passed, and Clara found herself returning again and again, sometimes to bring supplies, sometimes just to stand silently while Lucas worked. It confused her. It confused him. But neither stopped. One afternoon, she noticed him struggling with a heavy wooden bench. Without thinking, she stepped forward. "Let me help." Lucas froze. "You don't have to." "I know," she replied. Together they lifted the bench. When they set it down, Lucas looked at her for the first time in days, really looked. "You shouldn't have to see me," he whispered. "It can't be easy." "It's not," Clara admitted. "But avoiding you hasn't been easy either." He lowered his gaze. "I never expected forgiveness." "I haven't forgiven you," she said honestly. "I know." But, she hesitated. "I'm tired of carrying hatred. It hasn't brought Jamie back. It hasn't made anything easier. It just hurts. Every day." Lucas's hands trembled. "I would take your pain if I could." Clara believed him. And that scared her. In the following weeks, Clara began helping at the community center regularly. She sorted books, painted walls, planted flowers outside. Lucas continued repairing furniture. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. But the silence was no longer filled with hatred, it was filled with the slow, tentative rebuilding of two broken souls trying to breathe again. "I'm not the same person I was before," she said. "I don't think I ever will be. But I'm learning that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself. It's about seeing someone's humanity, even when your heart wants to close." Her voice trembled. "And today, I want to let forgiveness find its voice again. Even if it's a small voice. Even if it shakes." A soft murmur spread through the room, surprise, empathy, something tender. Clara lowered the microphone. She didn't want applause, she wanted peace. After the event ended, Lucas approached her slowly, almost fearfully. "Clara. I don't deserve your forgiveness," he whispered. "Maybe not," she said. "But I deserve to forgive." Lucas's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. I will spend the rest of my life trying to honor that." She nodded. She didn't hug him. She didn't need to. The moment itself was enough. As she stepped outside, the sun was setting, marigold bright across the sky. For the first time in years, Clara lifted her face toward it and let herself feel warm again. Forgiveness had not erased her pain. It had not brought Jamie back. But it had given her something she thought she had lost forever, a way forward. A voice inside her, a voice she thought grief had buried, spoke softly once again. And this time, it was forgiveness that answered.